Welcome to the final lecture, Chapter 15, Project Safety. There is one main thing that we're going to take from this chapter. We have this overreaching, and I don't mean to sound that in a bad way, but a very overreaching, very highly authoritative, highly effective as well, um, governmental agency that we affectionately refer to as OSHA. Um, OSHA is the controlling body, so to speak, and we'll look at how it's broken down a little bit. But that's the main thing on construction sites is the OSHA standards, OSHA compliance, OSHA inspections. Everything to do with OSHA governs your safety on construction sites. You can up them. You can always have a safer than recommended site, and sometimes that's not a bad idea. Reason we have to have some standards for safety is because construction accidents happen and they are expensive. I mean, think about the accident that occurred at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. It bankrupted the company that was at fault. There's no way they could afford to pay everything. When you have the book talks about $2 billion a year in direct costs resulting from largely avoidable job accidents. It's a lot of money. Those accidents often result, though, in serious injury or death on a construction site. It's a serious thing that happens. Construction is dangerous. I've been around construction sites and seen some crazy things happen. I know of guys, been hit with excavator buckets, fallen off of, ladders and scaffolding and all sorts of things that have happened. I've never known anybody personally that was killed at a construction site, but definitely some people who've been injured, seriously injured at construction sites. I've met a few. Safety in the legislature, you can read about sort of some of the history in the first up through about 15.4. 15.5 is where we kick in with some federal health and safety acts. The first one being the, what's it called? The Construction Safety Act of 69. And then the bigger one that we still look at today is 1970, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSHA. So OSHA is the one that we're going to focus on. Every question from this chapter is going to come from something to do with OSHA and the next 3 or 4 pages, so beginning at 15.6. Under OSHA, employers are responsible for providing a safe, healthful workplace. OSHA's mission is to assure safe and healthful workplaces by setting and enforcing standards and by providing training, outreach, education, and assistance. Employers must comply with all applicable OSHA standards. Employers must also comply with the General Duty Clause of OSHA, which requires employers to keep their workplace free of serious recognized hazards. So I just read for you the 15.6, the first paragraph, and it outlines the purpose real well of what the OSHA Act was about. Under OSHA, it talks about, where you can actually find it. The Code of Federal Regulations has a safety and health regulations for construction. You can pick up stuff at OSHA offices. You certainly by now you can look online to know where things are. It's very important to realize that you must comply with OSHA standards or you're going to start receiving heavy fines. I know like some of the things on OSHA standards are hard hats and steel-toed shoes. So, as a surveyor, I tend to want to buy steel-toed boots all the time. And I do have hard hats that I carry with me. Don't need them too often, but certainly if you're on a construction site, you're going to want them. OSHA has a lot of things. One of them is this form 300. That's something you're going to need to know about. It's a log of work-related injuries and illnesses. That you don't log every time somebody calls in sick. You don't log every time that somebody is injured playing football on the weekend. But you have to log injuries and illnesses related to the workplace. Um, and if you don't, I mean, there's serious repercussions for falsifying these reports, serious fines. Uh, you have to inform employees that the log exists. That's a big thing. Usually there's weekly safety meetings at big construction sites. Maybe even, if there's an incident that occurs, you're probably going to have a meeting the next day or that afternoon. Contractors are required to report on this Form 300, death, loss of consciousness, days away from work, restricted work activity or job transfer, medical treatment beyond first aid. So that Form 300 is something you're going to be asked about in its contents. Also, contractors are required to record work-related injuries and illnesses that are defined in the Act as significant. That is diagnosed by a physician or other licensed healthcare professional. And it goes on to describe a few of those things that can happen. Keep in mind too, like 15.7, we've got inspections by OSHA. That's the primary thing they do. They have inspectors that come to your construction sites, usually unannounced. They have the right to accompany compliance officers. They're allowed to be able to walk freely about construction sites for the most part. They write citations for when things go wrong. They fine people. They give you so many days to fix something. Um, so, they're there to enforce, um, what their the orders that they're given under OSHA, under the Act, and all of this actually falls underneath the Department of Labor. So it's something that is important to understand, these site inspections, because that's exactly how things are getting enforced. If there's no site inspections, there's a lot less enforcement, obviously, is going to happen. One of the other things that OSHA is, you can see the penalties. It talks about being fined. Penalties are up to $7,000 per day. Any employer who willfully or repeatedly violates the act may be assessed penalties of $70,000 for each violation. There's some bigger numbers here too. Willful violation that results in the death of an employee is punishable upon conviction by $10,000 or even imprisonment of not more than 6 months. But you can go to jail for falsifying these reports. And one of the other things, again, here, 15.9 is the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, or HAZCOM. You need to have a plan in place, and you need to know these elements of the plan. This written plan, you need to have labels on things. You have to have safety data sheets. You have to have training of employees. You have to be able to protect your employees and implement this hazardous communication plan when you're dealing with hazardous materials. Also, you have to report, you can kind of skim through the multi-employer work sites and contract safety requirements. They're good to know, but one thing that you have to have is the work injury and illness rates. You have a couple different ones to calculate. You've got how it's called, the recordable case incident rate, and then you have another one they call DART incident rate. You're gonna have to know those, and basically it's the total recordable cases is equal to the total number of injuries. You're talking about this incident rate that you're looking at. It's total number of injuries or illnesses. And then it says like times 200,000. Is that, let me think. Nope. And that's the number of employees. So the 200,000 number represents the number of hours, 100 employees working 40 hours per week. Okay. So multiply the total number of injuries and illnesses by the amount of hours that are being worked, and then divide that by the total number. So it tells you how to break things down in figure 15.1. And you're going to need to know a little bit about this accident rate, but it's definitely the thing. I've seen this before, like at BG&E over the nuclear power plant. They post this stuff. They let you know how many days since the last accident. They let you know all the different reports that are given out to OSHA. The 1517, I'm not going to ask anything from here, but you have to realize that it is definitely the role of the construction company and the construction managers to have safety in place. Like I said, I was being asked as a surveyor to come to safety meetings for a Food Lion, and I wasn't even going to be there all the time. They're asking me to show up every week for a safety meeting, and I was like, no, I'm only going to be on your job for 2 or 3 times, and that's it. And they were insisting that I have to come to every meeting every week, which is 1 meeting every week, but show up every week regardless. And I just told them I wasn't interested. But if you're on site, you're required to attend these safety meetings, and companies are required to put these plans in place. 1518 talks about that company safety program. The different elements that are mentioned in a company safety program, how many meetings you have, classes, seminars, safety training, personal protection, first aid training, even CPR, fire prevention. It's all listed there, and the various things you need to deal with in a plan. And companies have got to have safety plans in place. The same thing for any project. I told you the Food Lion was going to have a project safety meeting every Monday morning, and they expect everybody to be there, at least a representative from every firm, every company that's present. So safety is a very big issue. I'm not going to ask much more than I've just already talked about. But you can't avoid you cannot have unsafe conditions. Think about the liability. This is a course on contract law. We've talked about our construction and contract law. We've talked about the need for all of the insurance, all the liability that's involved. We've talked about that, and you definitely need to have it. But you can avoid the need for using it if you teach people safety and you maintain a safe working conditions, and you constantly reminding people of how to maintain that safety and how to protect themselves. So this is all I have for chapter 15. Again, I've mentioned to you the things that are due on the final, and this being the last lecture I have, I appreciate everybody's perseverance through all of this. And again, you're welcome to contact me with any questions you may have. Thank you.